Bead Company, and today I am going to be doing a project here, this alternating bow necklace with a new bead out of the Czech Republic, and it is called the bow bead. The bead itself is glass, again manufactured in the Czech Republic, and it's 3.5 by 15 millimeter. So it's larger than your average Czech glass bead that we bring to you, but actually a pretty standard size in this realm of Czech glass. Like the trends are going, it has 2 holes, which is going to make it have a fun effect with going the different ways, bowing one way and then the other way. To do this bow necklace, I'm going to be showing you how to do it with just stringing wire. So I have the stringing wire that I'll be using, some bead-along wire to do the necklace. This can also be done with thread and needle rather than the stringing wire, but I wanted to switch it up since I use thread and needle so often. I thought that I would do a basic stringing project for you. Again, if you have thread and needle and you'd rather use that, you can use that as well for the project. If you need any of the materials to do this bow necklace, you can go to the bottom of the screen here. There's a little date stamp that says when the video was published, and in that description of the video, it'll link to all of the different materials that are used in the project. Sometimes you have to press that little down arrow or show more button to get the links to all of these different items, but go ahead and do that, and then you can shop with me at potomacbeads.com. To actually start the project, you are going to need, of course, the bow beads. They come in packs of 20, and I'm going to be using about 18 for this project. If you want to do the necklace that has more of that bowing effect and you want to do it in a big chunk, I'm going to be keeping the back empty with some of these gemstones. You may want to purchase 2 packs of the bow beads, or you can alternate colors as well. That would be fun. In addition to the bow beads, I have a strand of 6 millimeter gemstones. These are bronzite, which give a nice brown golden color, and it goes really, really well with this white lilac Picasso color that is going to be used in the bow bead. In addition to the 6 millimeter, and I will be using approximately 14 inches of my 16-inch strand, because I'm going to have big sections in the back, about 7 inches on either side, that are just these beads, maybe throwing in my next material, which is an 11/0 demi-round in the gold color. So I have the gold color in the 11/0 demi-round, my bronzite in 6 millimeter, my 15 millimeter bow bead, and then I have 8/0 seed beads. And these 8/0 seed beads in that nice kind of luster color with that green look to it as well. Getting that natural colors going in, making that bluish lilac color pop out just ever so slightly. I'm going to be adding that gold bead in. Like I said, you can do this with a thread and needle, and that's actually how I started my design, was my thread and needle on my bead on it board. But instead I decided to go with beading wire for you. So I have some 19 strand bead-along wire, 0.018, that I'll be working with 2 strands of this in order to get that bowing effect. Likewise, because I am using beading wire, I have 2 crimp beads, and then also I have a clasp that you'll want to have with you. You need 2 pliers. You want your wire cutters to cut your bead stringing wire, and then you're also going to want a needle nose pliers to flatten out the crimp bead. Sometimes I will use a crimping pliers, so that's up to you. Some people hate the look of the flattened crimp bead. Some people prefer the folded over of the actual crimping pliers. I find that it's a little bit difficult for a lot of people to do and exactly do the fold over crimp, so that's up to you. You can also do some crimp covers, which the clamshells would go over, and they make a nice polished look at the end. To get started, I'm going to be cutting 2 pieces of my bead-along wire into 20 inches, and we'll get ready to begin our necklace. So lay everything out on your bead mat and get ready to begin. The first thing that I'm going to do as I get started with the design is I'm actually going to put the clasp on. If you're unsure how long you want the actual project to be, and in my case I want it right about 17 inches, you can put the clasp on first. If you're not sure of the size of the necklace, you may want to put a bead stopper on and actually do the center section when we get to that first, and then bring your sides up towards the end. What I'm going to do is take my 2 pieces of my cable and I dropped a crimp bead onto the actual cable wire. I have both pieces going the same direction through that crimp tube. I'm going to pick up one side of my clasp, go through the loop of the clasp, and this is one of the clasp garden clasps, and this is a pearl style clasp, traditional pearl style clasp, that it has a little hinge that then locks in. I'm going to take both of those wires back and put them back through that crimp tube going in the opposite direction. That's going to make a loop then. I'm going to push that up towards the clasp. There I have the 2 strands going through. I have my crimp tube. I want my strands to be even. And then I'm going to grab my pliers here and I'm going to flatten out that crimp tube right along the clasp. So I still have movement there and that crimp tube is just nice and flat. From there, I'll get ready to begin the project and begin adding on my beads. So a little trick that you can do when you are working with beads and you're taking them off and you are going to be beading with them just in their order, you can actually usually slide them off the string in your fingers in groups. So here I have 3 at a time, and I can usually take both my threads through all 3 at the same time. Of course, I'm not getting it since I'm recording, but I can usually slip them on from one area to another one. Here we have it then. And we're going to put those beads right down over the strands. If you have beads that are too that the hole is too small to go over both strands of wire, you can cut one of the strands or even both the strands down so that way they don't have to feed through that hole. Like I said, I'm going to do about 7 inches of beads on each side. Whether or not you want to put in some of your spacer beads or have metal beads or design the actual back of the necklace differently is up to you. I'll throw in every 3 or 4 beads, one of my spacer beads, just to bring that golden color in a tiny little bit and add that to the look. So I have my 3 beads on, then I'll take my little demi rounds here, put one of those on, let that drop down next to my beads, and then continue on with that side. So again, I'm going to do 7 inches where I just have the 3 beads, spacer, 3 beads, spacer, and then I'll get ready to do my fun bow middle. Now that I have my 7 inches strung with my spacer bead between each, I have the groupings of 3 of the bronzite, and I'm going to start with that bow bead shape here. This would also look really pretty in a spring design, having that look a little bit like tulips. So the first thing I need to do is split my strands. When I was stringing the beads on here, and when we did the crimp, we started out with 2 threads. You can also, if you want to, you could have done one long piece that was 40 inches or so and folded it over rather than doing the crimp bead. But I started with 2 so that way my ends look the same. The first thing I need to do is get my beads separate, or my strands separated about 9 inches apart. I'm sorry, 9 millimeters, not 9 inches, that would be crazy. 9 millimeters apart, so that way I go nicely into that curvature and that shape. I'm going to start with the top strand, and what I'm going to do to separate them out is to make this middle a statement as well. I'm going to do 3, 4, and 5 of my little demi rounds. So I have 5 of those little spacer demi rounds, and that's going to start then to be my top of my design. For the next portion, I'm going to do the same thing, and instead of 5, I'm going to do 7 because I want that bottom one to sit just a little bit lower. So I'm just using my cable like a needle, and I'm going to put those 7 demi rounds on there. This will also help you remember which one is top and which one is bottom. So right now I'm going to take that bottom strand and just kind of let it hang out. If you have a bead stopper, you can put that on. And I'm going to work on my top of my design. When I take my bow beads, I'm going to string the top so that I have beads facing one another and then opening up and leaving that open. So I'm going to put my first bow bead on, going through the top of the bead, so that way I have the curvature or the arch facing in. When I go through, then I'm going to pick up a bronzite bead, and I'm going to add my next bow bead also facing in, so that way it looks like it's cupping that 6mm bead. Along the top, I'm going to change the design just the tiniest little bit, adding in the spacer beads between or on each side of the 8/0 seed bead. I'm going to let that fall down next to my project. And now I'm going to do the next one. So I'm going to repeat this with my 9 groupings of my beads. So again, I'm going to take a bow bead, face it so the hole I'm going through is the top hole with the arch facing to the right. Put on a 6mm bead, top hole, arch to the left. Let that drop down. And that's going to be my next grouping. And again, just to space it out a tiny bit more than it did at the top, I'm going to be adding the demi round there in between on each side of the 8. So again, I'm going to do about 8 or 9 rotations of these, 2 per rotation or 2 per grouping. So you're going to have your groupings here of your center bow beads. So once you have the top strung, now it's going to be time to go to the bottom. And I ended up here with 9 groupings, so I ended up with my 18 here that I wanted to do. And we're going to end up with the bottoms of the bows touching one another, and we have space then for us to add in a bronzite right along the bottom. Like I changed the top, I'm also going to be adding the demi round on the sides of the bronzite bead as we string along the bottom. That stringing that we're going to start along the bottom is going to begin with the wire going through, that cable going through the bottom of the bow bead, adding an 8/0 seed bead. You could also use 3 of the demis through the next hole. So you're just simple stringing. Again, if you wanted to do this in a bead with thread and needle, you can do that as well. And then after adding that simple break there, you're going to add your demi, your 6mm bead, another demi, let those drop down, and then it's time to go through your next bow bead. So you're just doing simple stringing with that same pattern. So you can see that creates a tiny bit of a curvature, and you're going to be getting that nice natural curve in the necklace. Right now it's just sitting that way because I have it curved, but as we add the second strand, that's going to give us that nice curve and have those bow beads touch. So again, 8/0 seed bead goes on. Then we go through our bottom hole of our bow bead, finishing off that set. And then we are going to grab our next bead set, which is going to be our demi, then our 6mm, and then our demi. And you can really use a variety of beads for this and kind of play with the spacing. And then add your wire through the next of the bow beads. So there you have your next little set. So I'm going to continue doing the necklace pattern here of getting the bow beads in place and stringing the beads in between them, linking the top and the bottom strands. As you finish up stringing the second side, you can see that nice curvature that happened here, and it has a slight curve to it. So that's why I said if you did want to do the whole necklace in this and have that collar style, you can do that as well. Coming out of the end here, you're just going to make sure to pull both strands so that way you don't have any extra cable showing there. And I'm going to do the same thing that I did over here, adding 5 of my demi rounds on the top and 7 on the bottom. So grabbing the top strand here, again, I treat it as a needle and just grab my 5 beads. And then after I have the 5 on the top, I'm going to grab my 7 along the bottom here. And then I'm going to go in and bring the strands together again and go in and add my 3 beads on the bronzite. And then after I add the 3 beads, I'm going to add my spacer, which is my demi round, Also, I say spacer, which was probably a little bit confusing. I realized that because there is an actual spacer bead. There's the demi-round bead and there's the spacer bead. The demi-round bead is produced by Toho. The spacer bead is produced by Miyuki. They are almost identical, so whichever one you want to get for the project, if you want to follow along, you can use that. It's not going to affect the integrity of the necklace whatsoever. So again, I'm going to go in then, put on my spacer, which is that gold demi-round. And once I have on that bead, then I continue again with 3 more until I get my desired length. At the end of the necklace then, I have the crimp tube on. I put on my other side of my clasp. And then I run the wire back through the crimp tube. And if you want to, back through a couple beads. Bring the wire cable out right after a bead. Push that down, making sure that you're not showing any extra wire. Pull one wire, then the other wire till they're equal distance from the clasp. And go ahead and flatten out that crimp tube. Once I have that, I'm going to cut off the extra wire by pulling up on the wire, pushing down against the beads with my cutter, and making a nice tight flush cut. Push the bead down a little bit then over the end of that clasp, or that end of that bead rather. And there you have your clasp. And the fun thing about this necklace is you really can kind of make it your own. Like I said, you can go in and change up the beads that you put in the middle. You can make the spacing more dramatic. That centerpiece is going to have that curvature. So when you put it in your jewelry box, you don't want to kind of lay it down like that because it's going to curve. You want to take one end and kind of turn it in on the other and have it lay like that right along. But it lays really nicely along the neck, and it has almost that fun kind of Egyptian look to it, that collar with the fun bow style. Again, with this bow style, if you would want to, some green beads at the end, doing some yellow beads in the middle, or some pink beads in the middle would make it look like a tulip, also going that way. So if you get a chance to pick up the bow beads, they're really fun. I even think I'm going to do another project where I'm just going back and forth with big and small and kind of bowing them in towards one another, just a stretchy bracelet to go along with the fun necklace that I am going to now wear with some of my brown shirts, and even bring out some of the purple as well. So again, if you need the material to do this bowed necklace, you can go back to the beginning of the video where I listed out the materials that were used. You can also go below the video where it says the published date of the video, and there will give you links to the different materials that you can purchase them online, as well as checking us out at potomacbeads.com. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. You can follow us on Pinterest and get fun ideas there as well, and have fun creating all of these different looks. Another idea, as you're working and playing along with this bow bead, I thought about dropping something down from the middle here. It would look great with some of the different cabochons that we've done, playing around and adding one of those in as the pendant as well. So again, look at it as a fun bead weaving, stringing project to make it your own and really design and make it to fit your personality. As always, you can also subscribe to this YouTube channel and get regular updates on new beads like this bow bead, as well as projects that we do with those, what's going on in the beading world, and new designs as well. As always, thank you so much for watching, and have fun creating with the new bow beads.